All right, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We are glad you could make it to Tenda, and we are grateful for our attorney, Mercy Changwesha. She is from Zim, and actually her firm, her practice, she doesn't do diversity visa, the clients, but she would like to give back to the community and just share her knowledge, her expertise on the subject, just to make sure we are making sure we're crossing the T's. So we don't read. we don't read the information. The information is shared over and over, but we don't read the information. So we thought, okay, let's bring an expert, a lawyer who is able to help us. And this afternoon, we are going to concentrate on general questions on diversity visa. And if you have any specific questions, then please feel free to reach out to the attorney and she will speak to you one-on-one on consultation. This afternoon, we are just doing general information. So when you're asking your questions, just ask general questions. Don't make them specific to your personal issue, right? So I hope we are clear, and we would like to limit this to an hour because we are not paying. So let's be respectful of the time that the lawyer is giving us, right? And I would like to thank the admins for the diversity visa groups. So far, we have like 13 groups, and in each group, we have over like 527 people in each group. So that's over 5,000 people that are in the WhatsApp groups. And we have the volunteer admins that are managing these groups. The way we started about 3 years ago, one of us, she's in Canada, Saru, a family one, the diversity visa, and then we realized, we're not sharing this thing with our people from Zimbabwe. So let's just create groups. And our senior admin, Clive Chinzo, decided, okay, I'll just open 2 groups. Before we knew it, we had 25 groups, and it's like, Clive, stop. But he continued to create them. But right now, so we have a few of the admins. I think I'll just give the admins time to just say hello. I heard Sheila. Sheila, you're on?
Yeah, I'm here, Auntie Cassandra. Yeah. Hey, everybody. Glad to be here. Glad to be able to give back to the community the best way we can. And we're very excited because we do have fruits of people who win. So, you know, we keep going because every year we have a new group for selected people ever since when we started 3 years ago, right? So we have 3 selected groups now.
Awesome. And we have had over 30 families relocate to the USA already through these groups. And this is like the 3rd time Mercy has come on board to just share her expertise. So we appreciate that. I also see admin Neti.
Hi, everyone.
Okay.
Hi, Miss Cassandra. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Nettie, and I'm happy to be serving the Zim community where I can. Yeah, I also joined the team of admins. I think this will be my 3rd one, being part of the admin crew and helping out people. And I'm here to help as much as I can. Hi, everyone. Ask questions, thanks.
Thank you. Any other admins online? Okay, we'll give them time as they join, because I think some of them are working, but some will be coming to join. So thank you, thank you. And with that said, we will give over the time to our attorney so that she goes through the form. I think if she starts by going through the form and answering things, and as she's going through the form, if you have any questions on any particular section that she'll be on, please post in the group and we will try and make sure that she addresses the questions in the group. So over to you, Mercy.
Thank you, Miss Cassandra. And thank you to all the admins and all the work you guys are doing. It's very important, and it's very important for us to come together and help each other where we can. So what I'll do is I'll just go through quickly what the diversity visa is, what the requirements are, and then maybe just a few of the questions. I've gotten quite a bit. And then from there, I'll address any questions that you guys have. So I will stick mostly to the legal aspect of the diversity visa, and not so much the technical aspects, because I get a lot of people asking me how to upload passport photos and stuff like that. And I'm not going to be the most helpful on a question like that. But I think probably if you join one of the groups, you probably get guidance on something like that. So basically the diversity visa was started in the US in the 90s for the purpose of diversifying the immigrants that come to the United States. So we have countries that send in a lot of immigrants, countries like Canada, China, the United Kingdom, Mexico, and those people from those countries are not eligible to enter the lottery. So the whole point is to diversify the countries of origin of people who immigrate to the United States. So for this year, the only country in Africa that is not eligible is Nigeria. And the way they decide which countries are eligible is any country that has sent in more than 50,000 immigrants in the past 5 years will not be eligible to enter the diversity lottery. And so basically, it's a lottery. You enter, and if you get picked out, you have the opportunity to come to the United States as a permanent resident. So if you're selected, you become a permanent resident in the United States, along with your family, your immediate family, which is your spouse and your children. For this year's diversity lottery, the requirements are that you have completed high school, or you have completed, or you have 2 years of experience in the previous 5 years in an occupation that requires at least 2 years of training. So those are the basic requirements. There is no age requirement. So you can be of any age as long as you meet those 2 requirements, because of the requirement of the work experience or high school equivalent. Most likely, if you're under the age of 16, you won't qualify. But if you do fulfill those requirements, whatever age you are, you can qualify. And once you enter the lottery, you must also list your spouse, and that means the person you're married to, whether you are living together or not, whether you are separated. If you're not legally separated, you have to list that person, whether they intend to come with you or not. You must list them on the application. You must also list your children, and that means all your children, whether they were born in wedlock or out of wedlock, whether they are your biological children or adopted children or your stepchildren. And you must list your stepchildren even if you're no longer married to the person that you were married to when they became your stepchildren. And you can then, if you're selected in the lottery, you can immigrate with all these people if you want to. But let's say your spouse doesn't want to come to the United States, or you have a child, and the children you list are the children under the age of 21, or you have a child who's 20 who's decided they do not want to come to the United States. You must still list them. You must still list them in the application, even if eventually you will not bring them, right? So one of the things that can make you ineligible for the diversity lottery is if you, by the time you go to the embassy, it turns out you didn't list all your children or you didn't list your spouse, those are the things that can make you ineligible. If you have, by the time you apply, let's say you don't have a child, but the time you're processing your visa, you now have a child, you can add that child into your application, and they can come along with you. And that goes the same for a spouse. So if you were not married when you entered the lottery, but then you're married by the time you are processing your visa, you can come with your spouse, right? Let me see. One of the other questions that I get a lot is about the passport. So under the Trump administration, a passport was required for you to enter the diversity lottery. And that was a requirement, I think, for the past maybe 2 years or so. For the 2024 lottery, you're not required to have a passport at the time that you enter the lottery. Of course, you will need the passport by the time you're processing your visa and all that if you're selected, but you will not need a passport to enter the lottery itself. One of the things I want to stress a lot is there is no fee to file, to enter the lottery. There is no fee. Every single year, somebody will reach out to me and say, hey, I use this company to enter the lottery. I haven't heard back. I haven't got my confirmation number. And there is no fee. So if you just apply by yourself on that website, go through the groups that Cassandra was talking about. I don't know, Cassandra, if there's a way to put a link to the groups, or maybe you take people's numbers who want to join. I think it's going to be.
We'll post the link to
Okay.
join the group.
Okay, great. It's very important to make sure that you don't get scammed and pay money to enter the lottery. It should be a very simple process. Just please, if you can share this information with others, that there's no fee to enter the lottery. Now the chances of being selected out of the lottery, like any lottery, the chances are the chances are low, right? But the United States gives about 50,000 visas in the lottery, right? And those visas, they will be issued, and there's no one continent that can take all of them. So they have to be divided throughout the continents. So they are, and no one country can get more than 7% of the available visas, right? So there are very many chances that people from Zimbabwe will get selected, people from Zambia, people from all over Africa. So it's a long shot, but at the same time, it's not, because there are many Zimbabweans that will get selected. So more certainly you can, you do stand a chance. So there's no cost to enter. So there's really no reason why not. You might as well. The other question I get a lot is, if we are already in the United States, can I enter the lottery, right? So it's a little bit of a roundabout answer. Legally, yes, you can enter the lottery, right? There is no limitation about where you live, whether you're in the United States, whether you're outside the United States. You can enter the lottery if you meet the other eligibility requirements, which are what I went over as far as the high school education or the work experience, and also the country of eligibility. If you were born in a country that's eligible to enter the lottery this year. However, on a practical matter, if you are here in the United States, let's say you're an F1 student, right? This is your first year, you apply for the lottery, you're still in status, and you get selected. You would be eligible to adjust status, right? Without leaving the country. So you can just apply for a green card from here in the United States. If, on the other hand, you are out of status, there are other considerations that you have to look at. The first consideration is, have you accrued unlawful presence? So unlawful presence is different from being out of status in the fact that not only were you out of status, but you were also unlawfully present, right? So that means, let's take somebody who came here as a B1, B2 visitor, and they never left, right? And they never did anything else. That person is out of status and they're accruing unlawful presence. Somebody who has accrued unlawful presence and somebody who's out of status cannot apply for a green card from inside the United States. They would have to, if they got selected for the lottery, for them to get their green card, they would only be able to process that green card from a consulate overseas. So they would have to leave the country. But remember, the minute you've been unlawfully present, when you exit the country, you trigger the 3 or 10-year bar. If you've been unlawfully present for more than 6 months, less than a year, when you exit the country, you cannot return for 3 years. If you've been unlawfully present for more than a year, when you exit the country, you cannot return for 10 years. So once you exit the country and you try and go to the embassy abroad to process your green card, now you have to deal with the 3 or 10-year bar, right? If on the other hand, you came here as a B1, B2, before your B2 visa expired, you applied for asylum, for example. Now you are out of status, but you're not unlawfully present. So technically, you could exit the country and go and file for your visa abroad if you're selected in the lottery. You still cannot adjust from here, but you did not accrue unlawful presence. So you technically could, but I would advise you before you do that, before you exit, to just have a consultation with an attorney and just make sure that you don't need any waivers, and you would be fine going to adjust from abroad. Let me see. The other thing, and Cassandra, I'll let you address this one, because I remember when we spoke, I think it was a year or two ago, this came up and I wasn't 100% sure, and I can't remember what the answer was. But it was about O levels, whether O levels count as 12 years of as a high school diploma. And I think there were some nuances about whether you passed mathematics, passed English. If I remember correctly, there was something like that. I get a lot of questions about whether you need A levels or you just need O levels. And I think we answered that question a few years back. Cassandra, do you mind chipping in on that?
So the high school degree matched their 5 O levels. So that's what we discussed the last time.
And do the 5 O levels include math and English, or it doesn't matter, just any 5?
It included, well, we found out that at the embassy, sometimes they will ask for English, but sometimes they don't. So let's not count that as something that will buy you, find out, because it varies. So if you have 5 O levels, go for it.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that, Cassandra. Yeah, I remembered there was some kind of ambiguity there. And then the other thing that comes up a bit is about people who are about entering the lottery several times. So you can only enter once, right? So if you have several entries, then all of your entries will be disqualified. Now, if you are a married couple and both of you are separately eligible, then both of you can enter your own entry into the lottery, and you can list each other. So if one of you is selected, then all of you can immigrate based on that one application.
Attorney Mess, I just got the confirmation from Tonde, who was on. She's one of the admins, so she's confirming that English is a requirement, but mathematics is the discretionary.
I see. Okay,
Right.
So 5 O levels, English required, and math is discretionary.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And I think that's all that I had in terms of the most common questions I've heard from people that I just wanted to go ahead and address. Cassandra, before we jump onto the questions in the chat, is there anything else that you wanted me to address?
So if the question that comes up more often is about the traditional marriage.
Okay.
So should someone who is traditionally married apply as married or single?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So in my understanding is that in Zimbabwe, if you are traditionally married, you can still get a certificate of some sort, right? Under the different chapters. So if you have a marriage certificate, then you're married. But if, let's say, something like you moved in with your husband, right? Or maybe your husband paid dowry and that was all that you guys did, you never got any paperwork, any government paperwork, then legally for immigration purposes, for this purpose anyway, because for other purposes, you could count as married. For this purpose, you would not be married, right? You would need some sort of certificate, because even your traditional marriage can be registered. So you'd need to have your traditional marriage registered for it to count as married, right? If not, then then I want to be careful because I don't want to say you're not married, because that's, of course, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying for these purposes, because if you're married, you have to show a certificate of some sort, right? When you go to the embassy. So you would not be counted as married in that sense under these circumstances. So you would each separately file your own petition, and then you would immigrate separately.
Okay, thank you. Admin Tonde, you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Thank you for joining. We'll give you the platform to say hi and just share whatever is on your heart.
Hey everyone, sorry, I'm driving. Merci, thank you so much for taking this opportunity to help our fellow people. I think to add on to the traditional question that Cassandra mentioned, one of the questions that comes, or an additional question that comes, is, can I apply for the green card and my husband apply and we're traditionally married? And do we therefore go ahead and do the marriage whether we have one or not, or do we have to wait until we are announced and then we can go and do get the certificate of some sort? Mm-hmm. What's your input on that one?
Okay, so that's a good question. So legally, when you get selected when you get selected in the lottery, and then you were not married at the time that you entered the lottery, but you are now married at the time that you're applying for your visa, it's called an after acquired spouse, and that spouse can immigrate with you. However, the officers at the embassy do have a lot of discretion. So sometimes some things look funny, like you were not married, you entered the lottery, you won the lottery, and then you got married. So now it sounds like it kind of looks funny. And an embassy official can have a question of, okay, so how did you, this whole time you were not married and now suddenly you're married, right? And they might require additional evidence of your relationship with this person. Like, is it somebody that you were dating? This marriage was being planned this entire time, that kind of thing. So if you are a couple and you want to get married anyway, I wouldn't say wait until the results are announced. I would say just go ahead and get married anyway. And then if you're selected out of the lottery, then you already have a marriage certificate and all that. And also remember, the diversity lottery does have a lot of time constraints. You really have to act quickly. So you don't want to wait until you're announced that you've won and then go and get married, wait for that marriage certificate and then process your visa application. So if you were getting married anyway, you might as well just do it. I wouldn't say wait until you're selected and then get married. If that was the plan, then just go ahead and get married. But if for example, really you are planning a wedding, let's say in June, right? Or let's say May, the week after the lottery comes out, right? Which is fine. Then you can proceed with your plans, but then you have a little bit more evidence that that was the plan, right? So I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say wait until you're selected from the lottery and then get married, because it can look that way. It can look that way to the officer who's interviewing you, but it's like, okay, so you just suddenly got married. So you don't want things like that raise questions, because the embassy officials do have a lot of discretion, and they will be allowed to make a discretionary decision of whether your marriage is legitimate or it was entered into for purposes of immigration.
Thank you. There's a question in the chat. Is a child less than 21, not married. She's not married, but she has a child. So this is an under 21 child who's eligible. Can you include them both, the child and the grandchild?
Mhm. So in a diversity, in the diversity lottery, you can include your immediate relatives. So for US immigration purposes, an immediate relative is a spouse or a child under the age of 21, right? So your child, the one who's under 21, as long as she's not married, you can include them in your application. And when you process your paperwork, you can bring them with you. The grandchild is not an immediate relative. Is not an immediate relative to you, the principal applicant, right? So when your child comes here with you, enters the United States, becomes a permanent resident, they can then file for their child. So you, as the principal applicant, the grandparent, you cannot apply for the grandchild. That grandchild is not your immediate relative for immigration purposes, and so you cannot include them in your application. The other thing to consider also is if this child who's under 21 has O levels herself, she can also enter the lottery independently, right? So she can be listed under you, under your application, but she can also file her own application and list her child. So if she gets selected, she can come with her child.
Thank you. Whilst we are at that, so another example, there are two people, they're not married, they're both single parents, and they have a child. So when they are applying, each person, how do they apply?
So mom will apply for herself and her child, right? Dad will apply for himself and that same child. So if either one of them are selected, either one of them is able to bring the child. But of course, they are not able to bring the other parent because that other parent is not a derivative because they are not an immediate relative.
Ouch. Okay. So, all right, Sharon, I see you said you won, you were selected way back in 2010. You went to the embassy, you didn't have enough information. So you waited until it was too late. So now you're saying you don't want to be caught in the same situation. So people like your situation, this is the very reason why we have the WhatsApp groups, so that you stay informed of next steps. Because in the WhatsApp groups, we make sure that if you're selected, we walk with you until you land in the USA. So we move you to different groups until you get here. So that's the very reason why we are encouraging people to join. And there's a Zoom user who says, do I need funds in my bank account?
Mm-hmm. So that's a good question. So the US does have an inadmissibility prong called public charge, right? So for you to be granted a visa, you have to show that when you come to the United States, you will not depend on the government for your upkeep. So usually what that means is you can either have funds in your bank account or you can have somebody file an affidavit of support for you, showing that they have the funds to support you when you get here, you and your family. Cassandra, maybe you can speak a little bit about that. Do you guys help people find somebody who can be a sponsor?
Yes, we do. And we would like to give a shout out to those who are citizens are here. People have been so generous. Just offering, and we're saying, okay, I'll sponsor the person. They don't even know the person. And Admin Tonde is our go-to person to link the winner and the sponsor. But we are still appealing to those who have the green cards and those who have the citizens to say, okay, hey, help somebody, pass it forward. So that's good. That's why we're encouraging you, get in the groups.
Mm-hmm.
And another question, what can cause a person to be denied a visa despite having won the visa?
Okay, so that's a very good question. So number one, basically the information you entered when you entered the lottery doesn't match the information that you can prove, right? So if when you enter the lottery, you said I have one child, and then when you go to the embassy, this one child that you have no way of proving that's your child, right? Because sometimes people will do that. You just enter like your sister's child because you're thinking, if I get selected, I want to go with them. And then when the time comes, you cannot prove that that's your child. So they won't say, okay, we're not giving the child a visa, we'll give you a visa. They won't give any of you a visa, right? So if when you get selected, or you cannot prove you have the high school equivalent education, you cannot prove that you are from the country that is eligible for the DV lottery, right? So that's one of the basic things that will get you not to get your visa. Just that you just can't prove that you are eligible. The information that you submitted when you enter the lottery doesn't match what you can actually prove, right? The second thing is you are inadmissible to the United States. So there are several reasons why you would be inadmissible. One of them is criminal background. So if you have some types of criminal history, you may not be able to come to the United States, even if you've been selected for the visa, right? So, and the problem with the diversity lottery is that it's very time restricted, because most people, let's say you're coming in as maybe the sibling of somebody who is in the US, who's a US citizen, and you have a criminal history, we may have time to apply for a waiver for you. And then when the waiver gets approved, then you can go back to the embassy. But the DV lottery is very short. It's within that one fiscal year. So you may not have time to get a waiver. The second thing that can make you inadmissible is certain health conditions. So if you have certain medicals, you will still have to go through the medical exam. So if you have certain medical conditions, you may not be able to get a visa. So if you are just generally inadmissible, or if you have certain immigration histories, maybe you've been to the United States before, and you have something in your immigration history makes you ineligible, makes you inadmissible, then you will not be able to immigrate even if you do get selected for the visa. So those are the basic things. Or if you cannot prove that you will not be a public charge when you come to the United States. So those are the things that can get you to not be able to immigrate even if you've been selected.
So on the question about the public charge, there's always some conflict, because sometimes we like to ask Uncle Google, lawyer Google, about that. Can you just elaborate more? Because sometimes people tell us it's been dropped and it's back. So can you just address that?
So the public charge has never been dropped, right? But the interpretation of the public charge rule under Trump administration was different, right? So like, for example, people who were here in the United States, there were certain things that were going on that could make you a public charge that, like, for example, let me see if I can remember. So there were a lot of changes that happened to the public charge rule, because the way US immigration law works is there's a law on the books, right? But each administration can choose through policy to interpret it differently. So the public charge rule itself is in place. It has never been repealed, but the interpretation that the Trump administration was putting on it has mostly been repealed, right? So I cannot off the top of my head remember what some of the things that changed were, but we're basically back to pre-Trump era. So all you need is a joint sponsor, is an affidavit of support, a sponsor, or if you have your own funds, or some people have their own funds, and you can show that you have enough funds, then you're fine.
Okay, appreciate. We
I have a question. Sorry, Cassandra. On eligibility, one big question that comes up, and I know we come from Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe has very high rates of HIV. And one of the questions that really comes up is the question about, if I'm HIV positive, will I be approved or disapproved? Can you answer on that so that people can get a clear picture of it and not fear to apply?
Right. So HIV has not been a grounds for inadmissibility for years, I think over a decade now. So being HIV positive is not a grounds for inadmissibility. The things that make you inadmissible as far as medical conditions are things like syphilis, things like gonorrhea, things like alcohol dependency, things like mental health issues like that make you a danger to society. Those are the things I can remember off the top of my head, because they don't want, and that under normal circumstances, even those things, you can still come in either through a waiver or through showing that you've gotten treatment. But the diversity lottery is just such a short period of time that you probably wouldn't be able to make it. But HIV is not one of those. It's not been an inadmissibility ground for quite a long time now.
All right, thank you. So tokuzvinzwira kudhakwa kubanza, those are grounds of inadmissibility. So stay away from those. All right, we have a question on here. Someone they are an artisan, a journeyman, class 1 with over 5 years of experience. I guess this person may not have all levels, but then they have that. Are they eligible?
So I don't know off the top of my head, because when you look at a profession that requires at least 2 years of training, and you have at least 2 years of experience in the past 5 years, so it's not any profession. You have to go through the Department of Labor. And they have a specific link. And when you enter that link, then you can look for your profession, and then it will show you whether that profession qualifies. So I don't know, maybe this person, you can just send me an email and I can send you the link, or Cassandra, after this, I can send you the link to the Department of Labor that the person would have to use to go. So because it lists every profession, and you just have to check your own profession, whether it fits under those, it fits the qualification for a profession that requires 2 years of training. And then if it does, then if you have more than 2 years of experience, if you have at least 2 years of experience in the last 5 years, then you qualify.
Thank you. That answers that questions.
Auntie Cassandra.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, there is a question that came from one, I think it's 2 people, then one of the group. It's a father, it's a single father who has a son, and he's being denied access to the son just to get a picture. The mom is in UK and the kid stays with the in-laws. So should he just go ahead and apply without the son's information, or what's the best way to go about it?
Unfortunately, there really isn't a way around it, because the requirements are you have to include your child and you have to include their picture. So there really isn't any way around it, because if he puts on the application that he has a child, they will want a picture of the child. And the picture has to be taken within the last 6 months. And if he says that he doesn't have a child, then when he goes to the embassy and it turns out he has a child, he's ineligible, right, for the visa, because his information on the application doesn't match his actual information. So it's unfortunate, but there really isn't any way around it.
Thank you. Is
Mhm.
there an upper age limit?
So there is no age limit at all. So there really is no age limit, right, at all, really. As long as you meet the qualifications and you can prove that you will not be a public charge, you can immigrate. There isn't an age, there isn't a lower age limit or an upper age limit.
Thank you. And we also have requests for your email address, and people wanting to get in touch with you for other visa types. Okay. And so later on, you can share your information.
Yeah, sure. I can enter that in the chat. And then I see somebody who put a question earlier on. I want to know if one can apply when their visa is expired, but their passport is still valid. So I'm not sure I'm not sure if this is somebody who's in the United States with an expired visa and a valid passport, but okay, so the validity of your passport doesn't matter, right? Especially if you're still in the especially if you're inside the United States already. If you have an expired visa, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier about the being unlawfully present, being out of status. So we would have to go through that analysis for you as well if you're inside the United States.
All right, we can, is there anybody who didn't post their question and they would like to ask the question?
I just wanted to say questions about how to fill out the application. Can we please reserve those for the groups? That is the reason why we have the groups. We reserve this time to have an immigration attorney answer questions that are in the gray areas where it's not clear. So let's reserve questions about applications for the groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Tonde. That is very important because, yeah, we can't be wasting the attorney's time asking obvious questions that we already have the answers. Because like I said, this is like the third time we have had Mercy. So when the admins are giving you responses, they know what they're talking about. So let's go to the groups. And on the photos, when people are always commenting that, well, how do they know it's 6 months? Because they are encouraging you to put a photo in which is like no older than 6 months. This one, it's a technical question. I am a computer engineer. I know these things. When you take a photo, when you save it in the database, you are not saving the image that we see. You are saving the bytes that the computer can understand. And those bytes, if you save it, it can tell a lot from that. It's like a barcode. When you scan something, the barcode tells you the story, what it is. So it's just easier for the computer to pick up your photo and just disqualify you from that. So why are you taking a chance you against the computer? What are you trying to prove? Just get a recent photo and submit a recent photo. Okay,
Mommy. If I can add something to that, I know as Zimbabweans, you know, we think we can go get documents. Oh, sorry, my son is just mommy. I know as Zimbabweans, we think we're gonna, I don't have English, but to not gonna be my paper. Please don't even go that route. I don't know if Zimbabwe still has the June where you can sit. I would say if you do not have, yes, Juju, if you do not have the English, maybe just try to sit for it. Hopefully the results will come on time if you decide to join. But let's not go pay someone Kuzimsek and get sorry about my background. Let's not try to get my paper or beat marriage or any kind of that stuff, because they'll catch it and your chances of ever migrating here become almost zero. So just an encouragement to have have your legit papers and just do things the right way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm seeing a question here in the chat that says, if you don't win and you apply for a visa and you don't get it, will that affect your chances of getting a visitor's visa? So entering the lottery just by itself will not affect your chances of getting a visitor's visa, because that's not an application for an immigrant visa, right? That's just an entry into the lottery. if you enter the lottery, you get selected, and then you're invited to apply for a green card, for an immigrant visa. At that point, you have applied for an immigrant visa. So next time when you apply for a visitor's visa, it will come up. It doesn't mean that they will never give you a visitor's visa, but it will come up that you did apply for an immigrant visa. Somebody was asking how long will they take to respond to your application. The results will come out in May on the results of the lottery. And then you can keep checking, because some people who are selected don't qualify. And so they'll end up taking more people from the pool. So you can keep checking from May up to September of 2024. And then somebody was asking, can you also go over, again, if your visa has expired, but you live in the US? Okay, so let me go over this one more time. So if you are in the United States on an expired visa, right? You are out of status and you are accruing unlawful presence. So if you get selected for the visa, because you're out of status, you cannot apply for adjustment from inside the United States. You have to exit the country and apply from an embassy abroad. Now, in the United States, if you have been unlawfully present for more than 6 months and less than a year, whenever you exit the country, you're ineligible to come back to the US for 6 months. No, sorry, for 3 years. If you have been unlawfully present for more than a year, you are ineligible to come back to the US for at least 10 years. So if you are inside the United States, you have an expired visa, you're out of status, you're unlawfully present. Even if you win the lottery, you really have a long road ahead, because even if you exit, you will not be able to come back, but you cannot apply for the green card from here. So in a practical sense, it's not really the best option if you've been unlawfully present for more than 6 months.
Messi, what about those people who have pending asylums? Like they've applied for asylum, they're waiting for an interview or for a response?
So it depends on when they applied for asylum. So if you entered the United States, let's say as a visitor, before your visitor's visa expired, you applied for asylum. That means you are not unlawfully present, because you're waiting for a decision on a timely filed application, an application that you filed while you were still in status, right? So you are out of status, but you're not unlawfully present, and you have not accrued any unlawful presence. That means you still can't apply for adjustment from inside the United States because you're out of status, right? But because you have not accrued unlawful presence, you can exit and go and apply overseas. But anytime you exit the United States, you remember that there's no way for you to come back. So if you end up being inadmissible on any other ground in your lottery application, you won't have a way of coming back. So it's just something to keep in mind.
All right, we have 3 minutes to go to the top of the hour. So anyone else with a pressing question that has not been answered already or addressed already, we have a recording of this session. So if you came in late, don't worry, we'll share the recording with you. You can rewatch.
Mm-hmm. And I see somebody here was asking, if I'm married, but my husband does not want to relocate, do I have to put his pictures? Because even though we're not legally separated, we are not in good books. So unfortunately, if you're not legally separated and you're not divorced, you do have to put your husband's pictures. And he doesn't have to come with you when you get approved for the visa and all that, but he does have to be included in the application. And that includes both his information and his pictures. And I saw somebody asking whether okay, there's so many questions in the chat. Let me see if I can go through everything real quick. Can someone who's traditionally married with children fill the form now and seek the marriage license later? You can, but you cannot list your spouse. So if you are traditionally married, but you never got a license, a marriage license or marriage certificate, then you cannot list your spouse, because for immigration purposes, that's not considered your spouse. So you would be able to list your children, and your spouse can also file separately if they are eligible separately. And then yeah, so you would not be able to list them before you actually have a marriage license. I think that's it.
All right, I am posting the link, the information, the contact for our attorney, so you can get in touch.
Okay, Cassandra, let me just answer this one real quick. Someone says, I'm over 21, but I stay with my parents and my siblings. I'm a university student. Can I put my family if I win, or is it only for those who are married? So you can certainly apply, but you would not be able to list your parents or your siblings. The only family members you can list are your spouse or your kids. So you would not be able to list those. And then somebody said, come again on stepchildren. Am I obliged to list them when the biological parent who stays with the child does not want to share a recent photo? So legally, you're supposed to list all your children, adopted, stepchildren, biological, or your children under the age of 21. And the reason why is because there are certain things that your stepchildren are eligible for. So even if you're not bringing them, down the road, you can always file for them. So you are required to include your stepchildren under the age of 21. So yeah, I think those are all the questions I can see. Okay, so for those who missed the chat, the phone number for our attorney is 919-627-1036. I repeat, 919-627-1036. And the email address, it's really easy. Mercy is in City. So Mercy at Changwesha Law, one word. Changwesha Shona Chayo law.com. So Mercy at changweshalaw.com. That's the email, and the number 919-627-1036. So thank you, our in-house, our very own expert. We appreciate Mwanawevu Achidorera Kuvan. Thank you for taking the time.
Cassandra, one more time before you wrap up, I'm sorry for taking everybody back. Just say thank you for spearheading this, and everybody, Ananeti, Auntie Tonde, everybody, all the team, Nanti, the lawyer. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. My name is Saru.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Admin Saru. Didn't realize you were on. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, I was traveling, so I didn't want to disturb, but I listened to everything. Thank you kindly.
We appreciate. So
Thank
you. So once again, thank you, attorney, and thank you to our wonderful admins. So be patient with them. So, and for the group, I think we posted the link to the groups. So thank you. With this, I think we will call it a day. We would like to respect time here at Onwedu. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Cassandra. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Mercy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tony.